Hello and welcome in, you guys. We got One Piece chapter 1147 here with us today. My name is Sai, and we are here to talk about this chapter, break it down, and just have a good old time doing it. So, with that being said, to kick things off, we are going to start with the cover page, and my god, we're still in Udon. We are still in Udon, which isn't a big deal, right? But when you think about Yamato's journey, she wants to travel all throughout Wano, a full round trip to deliver Yasui's blade to his shrine. And we're only at the halfway point still. So this week, we see that Raizo has shown up to Who's Who's headquarters, or former headquarters, and he brought over some onigiri and food. And it's nice, you know, Raizo definitely got a promotion ever since Onigashima. He's now the daimyo of Udon. And yeah, it's sweet, it's wholesome. But, of course, it does leave a couple of questions still up in the air. Like, did Yamato agree to bring on Ulti and Page 1 under her wing? Or were they kicked to the curb and sent straight to prison? I feel like Oda left it ambiguous on purpose, right? He didn't want to give us the answer right away. But, of course, like I said, I think they're pretty much a shoo-in to be Yamato's scabbard. So I'm not too worried here. Oh, what's funny is that if you look in the background, you see just a random Wano samurai Fortnite dancing with Who's Who's helmet. Of course, I feel like a lot of Who's Who's crew have that helmet, so it doesn't have to be his, but it's just funny that they're dancing with it. They're like, hey, look at this. We beat these guys. Woo! So yeah, now that this is all solved, I wonder what's going to happen to the headquarters now. Are they going to tear down the building? Are they going to leave it up? Are they going to repurpose it? Not too sure. But hopefully Yamato, regardless, continues her journey onwards because, man, I can't wait till the next random character we meet. You know, I hope we run into more Beast Pirates going forward. So now we move on to the first page of the chapter, and we see that Saul drops some info on us. He says, hey, Rob and Chopper Hyde, I've seen this guy before. He is a God Knight. So this right here is a flashback to the very beginning of the Saul battle, which I really love that we get, by the way. Because last week, we saw Robin cowering in fear. Chopper was also cowering in fear inside of Saul's beard. And at the very end of the battle, he says to hide, you know, protect the children, go save them when you can. And I was like, wait a minute. Were they hiding in his beard this entire time? And Saul only at the very end of the battle told them to hide too? Like, that kind of struck me as odd. So I'm glad we're getting this clarification. Like, no. At the beginning of the battle, that is when he told him. And then at the very end, what we saw last week, he just reiterated it. So that's perfect. But of course, you know, the elephant in the room is that Saul says that he's seen Sommers before. When? Where? What capacity? I get it, right? Saul, he's old. I looked it up. He is 127 years old. He's lived a full life, longer than Brook, right? Saul is a giant. He's been around the block for a little bit. And, not to mention, he is a former vice admiral. He's a former VA. So, of course, he's definitely gotten around. But still, I feel like seeing a God Knight in action, seeing a God Knight firsthand, that's special. You know, not every VA gets that treatment, I'm assuming. Or like, how often are these guys actually deployed so that a vice admiral could see them? Like Smoker. Yeah, I always got to bring up Smoker. But if you were to ask Smoker if he has seen a God Knight or know if they're immortal, he'd probably wonder what the hell you're talking about. So Saul having this information, in my opinion, is really cool. And I hope they expand upon it. I hope we learn when, how, and where Saul met Sommers in the past. But yeah, he knows that they're immortal and that they just cannot win this battle. And when it comes to immortality, there's a lot of different ways this can work, right? I feel like I'm stating the obvious, but immortality comes in many different forms. The first one is where you cannot age, right? That's what we expect from Saint Saturn, because he's been the same age for seemingly 200 years. And then we have characters who are immortal, where you can't kill them, but they do age. And I'm assuming that the God Knights fall in that category. And that's simply because we've seen Garling, the supreme commander of the Holy Knights, age as time goes on, right? During God Valley, he was a spry young buck, but now look at the guy. He's old as hell. So I wonder if the God Knights here, Sommers, Gunkko, and Killingham, I wonder if they do age, but they're just simply unkillable, like Garling, or if they don't age and they're also immortal because you can't kill them, like Saint Saturn. It may seem like a minute difference, but I do think it matters at the end of the day, right? I think we're going to learn about how you get certain powers from Emu. Like, oh, you're this tier, I'll give you this. You're that tier, I'll give you that, right? So we cut back to current time, and we see that Sommers is like, wow, 2 survivors of Ohara, huh? the Navy really screwed the pooch. Like, they're really dropping the ball here. We see that Robin and Chopper are still hiding within Saul's beard. Saul is currently unconscious, and we look behind Summers, and we see that Gunkko has arrived on the scene, and right behind her are the Straw Hats from last chapter. She knocked them off the Colin pirate ship, and she went a step further. You know, she could have called it a day right there, but she went a step further, and she gathered all of them up and chained them up with her arrows. I don't want to be a broken record, but I gotta be a broken record. Gunkko's ability is so versatile. Every chapter, she's just showing new use cases for the arrow no mi. And hey, if you're like, okay, the chains aren't that impressive, you know, we've seen her wrap things up before, fair. But she also whips out an arrow sword. An arrow sword, bro, what are we doing here? It's kind of funny. They're all complaining about how they just got captured. And Nami actually complains about Jinbei. Like, Jinbei, how could you let this happen? I thought we'd be good with you here. And here's the thing, right? I'm a little bit silly. Ever since Luffy got promoted to a Yonko, I did consider Jinbei a part of that monster trio, right? You got Zoro, Sanji, and then Jinbei, the first son of the sea. And hey, you know, 2 weeks ago, I was like, oh, Jinbei's gonna put in work. You know, Jinbei might lose against Gunkko, but I think he's gonna look really damn good while going down. But then we got last chapter where Jinbei did get knocked off the ship. People are saying it's not exactly an L because they simply got knocked off like Smash Brothers. I think that's fine, right? Whether or not you want to draw the line there, doesn't really matter. He's captured here. And Nami's even complaining, like, Jinbei, what are you doing, man? And honestly, in a weird way, I kind of feel bad for him in this situation. And thankfully, though, he hasn't given up hope. You know, even though he's in this situation, he's still saying, quit making a racket. I'm trying to think, how do we handle this ability? Like, he hasn't given up yet. And that's all that matters, right? The minute he gets broken out of these arrows, I am putting some hopes in Jinbei. So, Brook is also captured, and he says something kind of interesting that we don't really get more context on in this chapter. But he looks at Gunkko one more time, and he says, that woman, no, it couldn't be. And then that is when we get the Brook and Gunkko interaction we have been waiting for, right? Ever since Gunkko whipped out the tone dial, the headphones, we knew that this was going to be special. But it turns out that Brook might know her as well. Right, like, it's one thing for Gunkko to know Brook because he's a pop star, but Brook knowing Gunkko, it's a little bit odd. So it does make me wonder, where has Brook seen her before? Did she buy backstage passes to his concert? Did he perhaps spy her on his tour? Or did he play for Celestial Dragons at one point, right? We don't really have any clue. We could even throw in the Saul route as well, right? Because Saul has seen St. Somers and Saul is really old. Brook kind of falls in that camp as well. Brook worked as a soldier for his kingdom at one point. We don't know which kingdom, but he worked for a kingdom. And he's 90 plus years old. So there is a chance that Brook met Gunkko in the past, and it had nothing to do with music. We don't quite know yet because we don't get, like I said, any context in this chapter. Instead, Gunkko does all the talking. So she points her sword at Brook. She kicks his head back and demands that he become her musical slave. So this was always an option. You know, I was personally aboard the fangirl route more, but I did joke around and I was like, hey guys, like, what if, you know, she wants Brook in a cage to sing music to her while she's eating? Or maybe she can carry Brook around with the collar and he's playing music all the damn time. Like, I could see that, right? We gotta remember, she is a celestial dragon at the end of the day. There was always that possibility. But I did think she was going to be a fangirl, so it's kind of cool seeing that this is the route Oda went. And of course, Brook turns down the slavery offer, as most people would. Well, actually, I don't know. You know, I've seen the comment section of the spoilers, and people are like, wait a minute, a Gunkko slave, huh? Maybe that's not so bad after all, right? When you think about celestial dragons, you usually go to Charlos or one of them, and it's like, I don't know, man. But Gunkko... Anyways, so, like I said, Brook turns it down. He says, hey, ever since I got the second life, I've devoted it to Straw Hat Luffy and no one else. Gunkko gets pretty upset about this, and she ends up kicking him. And then she takes a second to ponder this, because she was pretty upset. And then she starts kicking him some more. She really does not like the fact that Brook turned down her offer. It's kind of cute, kind of funny. So while all this is happening, Sommers and Killingham are talking in the background. Sommers is like, oh, you know, Gunkko got the straw hats. Are you going to bring him back home? And that's when Killingham says, no. Guys, what are we doing here? Those are the Straw Hat Pirates. You do know that Luffy's here and he's going to get his people back, right? Like, we do not want to deal with any of this. Sommers, by the end of this whole thing, agrees. He's like, hey, Gunkko, cut it out. You know, we got to let them loose, man. I don't want to deal with a Yonko right now. Like, that is not our mission. And I like that, because it does put a lot of respect on Luffy's newfound Emperor title, which kind of sounds weird to say newfound. It's been like 2.5, almost 3 years now. Whenever somebody puts respect on Luffy's Yonko title, it hits me with this weird sense of reflection, where I'm like, damn, we really made it, huh? Because it has been like, what, 27 plus years since One Piece has started, and we've just come a long way. So seeing people like the God Knights fear and respect it, it's a good feeling. It really is. So even though Sommers tells Gunkko to quit it, even though Sommers and Killingham tell her to quit poking the bear, we don't see her quit it in this chapter, right? Like, she doesn't exactly let the Straw Hats go. She doesn't exactly stop kicking Brook for turning her down. She just continues on. So I wonder if she's gonna end up regretting this later, considering the fact that she fears Nika and Luffy literally is Nika. So yeah, I'm kind of wondering how that's gonna go down. But aside from that though, major shoutouts to Brook, right? Every Straw Hat has this moment where somebody tries to question their loyalty or try to sway them to the other side, and then that Straw Hat crew member says, oh, nope, I swore my allegiance to Luffy and no other, and this is Brook's moment. So before we move on to the next big plot point, I do just want to shout out some of the new monsters we see in this chapter, because beforehand we knew about the Draugrs, you know, we knew about the Ghosts, the Nidhogg, the Fenrir, Jormungandr. We've seen all those guys before, but in this chapter we get a bunch of new monsters which don't really matter because they're kind of just background pieces, but I thought they were really cool. Like, the first new one we get is a jack-o'-lantern type creature. And I was like, whoa, like that's freaking awesome, man. We also see this weird spider dog. We see Pantheon from League of Legends, a dog fish, which seems really cursed. And then in one panel, we even see a giant sphinx towering over a village, which is pretty damn cool. So Sommers kicked off his message now, and he transmits it to all of Elbaf. And when they say all of Elbaf, I do wonder if this message is reaching the underworld, right? Can Luffy, Loki, Zoro, Sanji, and Hardin hear this message as we speak? I'm not too sure. In the first panel where Sommers starts it, we get like this outside shot of all of Elbaf. So based on the way Oda framed that panel, it kind of does seem like the underworld should be hearing this. But of course, we don't see the boys in this chapter, so that's still a mystery. So Sommers says, hey, warriors of Elbaf, I bet you're wondering what the hell is going on. What is with all these abnormalities right now? What are we facing? Well, I will explain the situation. I am the dagger of the Holy Land, Saint Sommers. Bro, what? Dagger of the Holy Land? That sounds kind of cool. Personally though, I think Sword of the Holy Land sounds a lot cooler, but I'm not here to split hairs. Dagger of the Holy Land, also a pretty fire title. They announce themselves as the Dagger of the Holy Land, and that they are here with a couple of demands. So while he's giving this speech, we actually see 2 new villages. So this entire time, we've spent a majority of it in the Western Village, but here we see other villages. We see an artisanal village, and we also see a hunter village in the Northwest and Southwest regions. So that's pretty cool. It's always nice seeing that there's more than just the giants we've seen before in the past. So yeah, they kind of expand Elbaf during all of this. But Sommers goes on and he says, hey, we're currently in the middle of kidnapping 10 children from this country. And we also just beat down an orange-haired giant who tried his damnedest to save them. Which, of course, he's referring to Saul here. And we actually see Saul in that panel, and he's laying face down in a pool of vines and thorns. What's really cool is that in that panel, though, you see Sommers, and he's actually standing on a thorn vine snake? Pretty damn awesome. Like I said, the God Knights are the gift that keep on giving, every chapter we get of them, they just do something new, right? Like, the Thorn Snake doesn't do anything in this chapter. It's just there, man. It's really just there. And right now, all the God Knights have had their own, quote, animals that they can ride and companion with. Like, Shamrock had a Cerberus. Gunkko has an arrow bird. And now we see that Summers has a thorn vine snake. What does Killingham have? Do the rest of the God Knights also have devil fruit animals that they control? And now that I think about it, it really does fall in line with the celestial dragon mentality of enslaving and using things to your advantage. It just makes sense that they have pets like this. They go on a little bit more, and he says, in short, you naively assumed those brats would be kept safe, but they're storming towards our goal right now. Let's keep this brief. I am addressing Elder Jarl, the Mountain Beard, to be the speaker of Elbaf. Seeing as the king is gone, you are the man right now. And Summer's demand is for Elbaf to take a knee. He wants Elbaf to join the world government, but not just that. He also wants Elbaf to willingly destroy their own library and school. It goes back to what he said last chapter, right? Like, Elbaf does not need this. You guys are warriors, man. Like, you don't need any of this. You don't need to be peaceful or knowledgeable. You just gotta be merciless instead. So yes, Jarl will now seemingly decide the fate of Elbaf moving forward. And I laughed. I laughed when I saw that this was a plot point, because so many people, at least the people I have talked to, they actually believe that Jarl is a traitor. You know, Jarl is a bad guy. And I don't think it's a bad theory, but I think Jarl might be a little bit too dumb to be a bad guy. Like, I just can't see it yet. But now that he's put in this position, I'm like, wait a minute. If he is a traitor, if Jarl actually is a bad guy, then he's going to take the deal. Well, to be fair, though, I think most people would take this deal because they are kidnapping children, right? So you don't have to be bad to do it, but if he is bad, I mean, it kind of pushes it even further, right? But yeah, Jarl is now the representative of Elbaf, and in this chapter, we don't see him make a decision. He doesn't respond right away, and I feel like he will soon. Because if you look at the map that they give us, right? Because Oda draws a map here describing where everybody's at and where they're going. The kids are about to walk by Jarl. If Jarl sees the kids walking through the village and he can't stop them, maybe he does take the knee here. And I wouldn't blame him. Like I said, I wouldn't blame him. So while he was giving the speech, though, we do get to see the kids that are being taken hostage. We actually get a name for each and every one of them. First up, we have Ylva, which is, of course, Jarl's great-granddaughter. Next, we have Scotty, Olaf, who is Oimo's grandson, which is pretty crazy. I forgot how old Oimo is. So the fact that Oimo's not just married, but has a kid, and then his kid has a kid, pretty insane, man. These giants get around. Next, we have Colleen, Mug, Ronya, who looks like an Elbaf version of Chimney, by the way. We have Bent, whose name is really cursed. Joanna, who has no parents because I'm assuming they're all dead due to Loki and Harald's fight. And the reason I make that assumption is because Joanna, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Joanna has these ancient giant horns on her head. So I'm assuming her parents died with the other ancient giants in the throne room. And then, of course, last but not least, we have Bjorn and Colin. They right there are their first group of kids who are on their way off of Elbaf. And I say first group of kids because we do have to remember, these kids were initially going to burn in the fire, but Jinbei extinguished it. And the God Knight's response to them burning in the fire was, oh, if they die, we can just grab another batch of kids from the school. So even if Jarl and the Straw Hats are successful in saving these kids without beating the God Knights could just start this up again, right? Like, it's no skin off their bone. And yeah, it's a pretty tough scenario. And as far as their rescuers go, the giant warrior pirates, they're being hung up. So last we saw, the past 2 or 3 chapters, they've been doing pretty good against the nightmare monsters, right? They're over here beheading them, putting them on sticks. They're killing these guys. But this week, we actually meet a new type or variety of monsters that the giant warrior pirates can't simply overcome. So we cut over to Brogy, and he says, damn, well, like, what is this creature supposed to be? They're tearing down our oars, our ship is getting damaged, what's happening? This is some kind of beastly woman. And then we have this no-name giant saying, this kind of looks like my missus. And then another giant says, wait a minute, that one over there looks like my wife. And it's kind of funny because, you know, the other giants are like, whoa, don't let her hear that. And then they start coming to the realization that if these are the kids' nightmares, and some of them fear their mom, then it is indeed their wives and mistresses. They can't fight them. You know, fighting their moms, their wives, their daughters, or what have you, it's kind of odd, you know? Like, some of these guys, like, they're throwing out the Enel shocked face. Some of them are apologizing to them, like, hey, sorry, I always go out drinking, mom. I should have taken out the trash. Like, they're going through it. They're going through it so hard that the Great Eric Sval edition ship crashes into the forest. Like, it transcends being a meme to where they're actually losing the battle now, which I think is hilarious. You know, out of all of the nightmare monsters, I think this is by far the scariest. So yes, the ship ends up crashing, and they actually land in front of Ripley, Frankie, Bonnie, and Lilith, which is, it's pretty good, because Scopper's on that ship, and Scopper and Ripley are finally having their reunion. Ripley and Scopper talk about Colin for a quick second, and it's funny because Scopper's like, oh, my boy's captured, he tried to save the other kids. That's my son right there. And then Ripley's like, wait a minute, this is no time to be proud, Gabon. And Sommers, like I said, finishes off his message. I kind of talked about that earlier, but the minute Sommers makes these demands, and the minute Ange says, hey, please, you know, not the school, not the library, that is when Scopper gets serious. You know, when it comes to his kid, Scopper's laughing it up, saying, oh, that's my boy. But the minute Sommers talks about destroying the library, Scopper leaves. You know, Ripley's like, yeah, son, please. And he just says, on it. He rushes off, and the same goes for Robin. They do not want the school and the library to be destroyed. For Robin, it makes sense, right? The researchers of Ohara, they died for this. They died for their books to survive throughout history. So now that they're under threat, Robin, of course, is springing into action. But as far as Scopper goes, I wonder why he's so protective over these books. I mean, maybe he feels the same way, right? We gotta remember Roger is an old pirate. Maybe he knew Clover. And if that is the case, I would love to see more in regards to that as well. Like, is there a Scopper and Clover flashback somewhere? Or maybe a Roger Scopper flashback in there? Not really too sure. Of course, he could just be rushing off to see his son, but I think it's all of the above, right? It's his son, it's the library, it's the school. He's not gonna let any of that fly. You know, this is his hometown. He's not gonna let the God Knights F this up. One thing I kind of wish we got as well, by the way, you know, I'm greedy when it comes to Scopper stuff, but I wish Scopper said something about the God Knights, because we know that he knows about them, right? He was at God Valley, so I wish he kind of threw in like a one or two liner, like, oh, they're at it again, or ooh, who is it this time? You know, something like that, but we don't get it. Instead, we just get a really cool finale where Scopper and Robin are rushing off. And all I gotta say is that I really hope that Oda is not blue balling us. I hope come next week, we do genuinely see Robin and Scopper showing out. Robin's willingness to participate at the end of the chapter feels really good. Like, yeah, it makes sense, but damn, like, Robin is locking in, you know, like, for lack of a better word, Robin is getting serious right now. And I love it. You know, I love that the monster trio are not here. I know last chapter I kind of asked for them because I want to see how they relate to the God Knights, but because they're not here, we do get to see other Straw Hats show out, like Robin. And now, it just begs the question, where will they go? So, based on the map that we got in this chapter, Robin is closest to Sommers and Gunkko. Of course, Sommers, we don't see him by the end of the chapter. He's still going off on his snake. At the very beginning, he was right next to Saul, but by the end of the chapter, if you pay attention to Sommers' panels, you don't see Saul in the background anymore. So would Robin leave Saul's beard and go straight to Summers? Or would she run into Gunkko first because Gunkko is right next to Saul? Or would she go over to the school in the library to protect the books? And of course, that is where killing him is at. I'm undecided. I think that's a tough one. I think Robin does want to save the kids no matter what, but I feel like the books might be where she goes to first. But that should be pretty tough because, like I said, Gunkko and Summers are in close proximity to her. I think ideally, what I think could happen, like I said, best case scenario, but Summers is long gone. You know, he hopped on his snake, he went with the kids, he's not next to Saul or Robin anymore by the end. That is what I'm hoping for, because guess what? Robin could fight Gunkko. Gunkko was nearby, maybe Robin fights Gunkko, and that is how the Straw Hats get freed. Because, you gotta remember, Jinbei, Brook, Nami, and Usopp, they're still tied up. They don't really have a way to break out of the arrows that binds them. I feel like Jinbei could. Jinbei should be able to because he has Haki, right? We've seen Jinbei go full body armament Haki, so he should be able to just, out of those chains, but he hasn't yet. So maybe he can't, maybe he's waiting, but if that isn't the case, then maybe that is where Robin steps in. Robin could fight Gunkko, distract her, and then all of a sudden, her arrows loosen their grip, and that is when the Straw Hats break free and all go off onto their own battles. Maybe Robin goes off as well. Maybe Robin goes off to fight Summers. Maybe she goes off to fight Killingham at the library. There's a lot of possibilities here, but I do think freeing the Straw Hats currently should be a top priority because that does put more soldiers on the battlefield. So outside of Robin, the next person I want to talk about is Scopper. Scopper rushed off. We don't know where he's going. He could be going to Colin. He could be going to save the library as well. But I think as it stands right now, one thing I do want everybody to keep in mind is that none of the kids will be saved until we beat Gunkko and Summers. So Killingham, he let the kids wake up in this chapter. He said the sleep effect should wear off, and it did. The kids are awake. So his part of this whole scheme has pretty much been completed. So Killingham is just chilling in the library. He's like an optional boss as it stands. Unless he sets the library on fire himself, he's an optional boss. The two main people we have to beat are Gunkko and Summers, because Gunkko is making the kids walk forward, and then Summers is making it to where you can't touch the kids. So when it comes to Scopper, I think it makes the most sense to go after those two God Knights. Hopefully, he fights Summers. I think Summers is who I want Scopper to fight the most, just because of the abilities. You know, we heard that Scopper is known for chopping down trees, and not to mention, but he also has a bunch of long-ranged abilities, so I do think he would work really well against him in a battle. So yeah, I have Scopper against Summers. That's my number one pick. And then the rest of the strats, most notably maybe Brook, would take down Gunkko. Maybe Brook alongside Nami and the rest. Or maybe Nami goes off to save the children. Nami and Usopp run off to save the children. And then that is how we have all of these matchups going down. The one oddball, in my opinion, the one character I can't pinpoint where they're going to, is probably just Frankie and Chopper. That's kind of a tough one, because I feel like they're pretty splashable on any battlefront. So, if I had to lock in my guess right now, I'm going to say this. I think Chopper, Robin, Saul, and Frankie will go to Killingham. Weird combination, I know, but I think Robin would want to save the library, save the books. Chopper would maybe go to the library with Robin for the owl? Because the owl is there. Maybe the owl, can help them out somehow, some way. Maybe the owl can save the books. Frankie, I just didn't know where to put him, so I put him in the library in school. I know, it's kind of lazy. And then Saul, of course, also tied to the library in the school, so I sent Saul that way. So those four versus Killingham. For Gunkko, I think Gunkko could be a Brook and Jinbei match. Brook and Gunkko, obviously they have history. And then Jinbei, he's currently thinking of ways to beat Gunkko, so hopefully that pays off. Nami and Usopp, I can totally see them running towards the kids and helping them out. And the reason I want Usopp there is because the kids are eventually going to be walking by the West Village where all the giants are. If Jarl is about to give up hope and say, hey, let's bend the knee, maybe Usopp will unite the giants and say, hey, Jarl, don't do that. we will figure something out. You know, I think Usopp can provide a lot of moral support to the giants in the village. So yes, that is where I want to send Usopp and Nami. Nami mainly because of the kids though, right? And then Sommers, I think will be taken care of by Yasan, Dorian Brogy, and Ripley. I think they'll just continue fighting the monsters, because we can't forget that the monsters are still here. So somebody has to fight them. I think we're going to leave that up to the giants. Bonnie and Lilith are also nearby. And in my honest opinion, I hope they don't do anything. You know, like, I've cooked up theories where Bonnie gets kidnapped, or Bonnie runs into the Celestial Dragons and gets kidnapped with the rest of the kids. And I think that's a really fun idea. But that doesn't mean I exactly want it to happen, right? Like, so maybe it's best if Bonnie and Lilith just stay behind and just relax with the giants of Elbaf, right? So yeah, that's my prediction on where everybody's going to go. And that's kind of it. Honestly, this was a really good chapter. I love the setup. And I love, like I said, I love that Robin is putting her foot down here. I just hope that Oda goes through with it and there is good payoff. That is my one thing. You know, I love all the Straw Hats to varying degrees. You know, some I like more than others. But I always wish on a star that the Straw Hats that don't often show out get to show out. Whether that's Brook, Jinbei, Nami, Usopp, Robin, Frankie, all of them. You know, the Monster Trio gets a lot of love, right? The minute Luffy, Zoro, Sanji shows up, it's a different game. So until they show up, I hope the Straw Hats here handle this situation. And I think they will. I think that might be what Oda is setting up in a way. Because in this chapter, like I said, Killingham and Sommers don't want the Yonko smoke. They kind of don't want to fight Luffy. So maybe they don't fight Luffy. Maybe Luffy shows up at the very end, but maybe 90% of this battle is done without him, which I think would be a nice change of pace. And I would love to pass the question on to you guys. What do you think about all this? Where do you think every Straw Hat is going? I know, it kind of a tall order, right? Like, hey, where are all 9 Straw Hats gonna go? But I do want to hear all your opinions down there. And of course, come the next couple of days, we will be going through the comment section and reading what you guys have to say. So, you know, I would love to see those theories down below. But yeah, that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spending your time with me on this beautiful, beautiful Thursday. Will this video come out on Thursday? It's a lot. I don't know. I don't know, actually. I'm like scratching my chin about that one. I probably will. But yeah, you guys take care. On the side, of course, I have a couple of channels if you want to check those out. I have Psyduck, which is my gaming channel. Post gaming clips on there all the time. I also stream over on Twitch every other night. So feel free to check that out over at Psyduck. And I also have an anime reaction channel called Somnus. If you want to look it up on YouTube, it's Somnus Reacts. I'll be linking it down below too. And that is where I react to One Piece and other animes of the season. So check those channels out if you want. If you don't want to, no biggie. But yeah, peace out, guys.